Welcome back, one and all, to the 12th episode of the No Name Cinema Society, and the first in like a month. We had a little bit of a hiatus, so now you're seeing me back in Los Angeles, and sans the beard, my playoff beard is gone, but my team are the world champions, and we came to you on the draft lottery night, and now we come to you on the draft night for the NBA, which I know me and Drunk Davey are excited about. I'm taping the draft stuff going on, but if Minnesota did not take D'Angelo Russell, they're going to regret that for the rest of their lives. But hopefully he'll fall to number 3 in the Sixers. Davey Joe, wouldn't you like to have D'Angelo Russell?
Well, I already know what happened, so I won't comment.
Welcome back. How have you been, Drunk Davey?
Been good, been good.
J Money, how are you?
I'm pretty good. Oh, yeah, I'm pretty good. Secret identity. Secret identity.
It's okay. I hadn't cut to you yet, so it worked out perfect.
Oh, that's what nobody even knows. My secret identity is safe. That's right.
Welcome back. It's been a long time. I can't read your returning member Diners Club card holder. Okay, yeah, I couldn't read that at first.
But you already kind of knew it, right? In your heart, it's not a surprise, is it?
That you're Diners Club card holder? No, not a surprise in the slightest. I just couldn't read it at that moment. I don't have my glasses on either, so I had to get in real tight.
You guys are blind.
All right, it's been a real long time. You know, we were hoping to talk about Spy a lot sooner, and I think for all of us, we've seen it pretty much a month ago at this point. So we're going to try and remember what we had to talk about, and get through this this next section here. So do you guys remember the movie?
Yeah, vaguely.
It happened. We're going to it.
And so, Drunk Davey, why don't you start us off with your opening thoughts?
You're not going to do a synopsis?
Oh, I completely forgot. See, that's how long it's been. I completely forgot about the synopsis. All right, I'm going to try and do this off the cuff here.
All right.
My synopsis would be that Melissa McCarthy plays basically an office assistant for the CIA who gets wrangled into having to go in the field herself, but encounters a lot of hijinks along the way as she tries to become a real spy, and gets involved in this international web of comedic intrigue in this movie where she teams with director Paul Feig for the third time. She worked with him in both The Heat and Bridesmaids. How's that?
That was fantastic, dude.
That worked.
Usually I write those things in advance. Completely forgot. Davey Joe.
Maybe you should stop because that was really good.
Also, wait a month to see it, and then or wait a month after you see it to summit.
Maybe that's the answer.
Yeah.
I think this movie just is a little easier to summarize than some of the other ones. Davey Joe, go ahead. Take it away with your opening thoughts.
Well, I'll tell you, I saw Tammy last year, and this is better than that.
Wasn't Tammy supposed to be like awful?
Oh, it was one of the worst movies like ever. I mean, you thought Hot Pursuit was bad.
So your opening thoughts are not saying that much. You're leaving lots of room there.
Right. Yes.
Okay. All right. So we'll dig into that a little deeper. J Money, your opening thoughts.
No, I'm going to totally agree with David Joe. This was definitely wasn't Tammy.
I didn't bother to watch Tammy, so my opening thoughts will not make a reference to Tammy. J Money, did you actually see Tammy?
No, I didn't. I'm just going to assume that it wasn't Tammy.
Well, I'm gonna compare it to something else. The Tammy wasn't directed by Paul Feig, but I will say this movie had its moments, but it was not as good as The Heat. So, am I echoing, you guys?
A little bit.
That's weird. Anyway, those are my opening thoughts. So, David Joe, can you be a little more specific?
No, yeah, I really did like this movie a lot. I thought it was funny, and I came into it with pretty low expectations, but I was definitely pleasantly surprised, and I thought McCarthy was as good as I've seen her since Bridesmaids, but I hadn't seen The Heat, and everyone tells me that it's better. So.
Have you seen? Well, first of all, I actually came in from a different perspective, and I don't want to forget that you said this. I actually came up, and generally speaking, as some of you may know, I don't love, or I guess I have a harder time with comedies. You know, or I don't know if it's a higher bar or what it is, but I tend not to enjoy comedies as much. They're less interesting to me for one reason or another, with a handful of exceptions. And so, but for some reason, and I'm not exactly sure why, maybe it was the spy premise, I had higher expectations for this. And it also was coming out of Los Angeles. It was getting a lot of buzz, which I want to get into a little bit later. I had higher expectations, and in that sense, my expectations were not met. And I don't want to suggest that I thought the film was bad, but certainly in comparison to The Heat, you know, it didn't live up to those expectations. And I didn't laugh that much. I basically I smiled a lot, but I didn't really laugh. I don't know if that makes any sense. Jay Money, have you seen The Heat?
I have seen The Heat. I actually haven't seen Bridesmaids, which I know is kind of a mortal sin at this point. I keep meaning to see it. I plan to see it and then watch the Lizzie Kaplan movie back-to-back with that one. What is that one? Bachelorette? Something like that. Anyway. So I guess my basis of comparison really is The Heat to this movie, because that's really the only other Paul Feig directed movie I've seen with her.
What was your other comparison? I'm sorry.
Well, I haven't seen Bridesmaids, is what I was saying. So I only have The Heat to go against.
Oh, you have seen The Heat?
Yeah, I have seen The Heat. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I missed that. So yeah. So are you in agreement that The Heat was a little bit stronger?
I would put them on pretty much the same level, I guess. I think that I actually appreciate Spy more. I think that I liked Spy more overall. I think that I think Melissa McCarthy might have been funnier overall in Heat, but I think that that's also because her character wasn't quite as like, she didn't quite go through the same emotional changes that you saw her go through in Spy. So I think that she had a lot more things to do in Spy besides just be kind of funny. I think that I honestly really enjoyed Spy, and I wouldn't expect to. I'm not the kind of person that necessarily enjoys neurotic comedy. I guess to your point, JB, you know, it's funny because I've thought about this a lot. I don't really know if I enjoy comedy so much. I think that I enjoy a lot of movies that are kind of funny and quirky, but you wouldn't necessarily define them outright as comedies. And I think a large part of that has to do with also how you're viewing it. I mean, I don't know what your theater was like, JB. Was it full of people?
Yeah, no, I saw it opening weekend at a dine-in theater. I don't think you guys have those in New York yet.
There's some growing up now, yeah.
But I mean, like, not like the Alamo Drafthouse. I mean, it was an AMC dine-in theater, so it was a combination of a multiplex and a dine-in theater. So, and there's one here in Marina Del Rey for those of you that live close to me. So yeah, no, it was pretty full. But you know, yeah, I agree with you in terms of the comedy thing. You know, I don't take to it as much. But I mean, I think that, you know, I'm also not a fan of Bridesmaids. I'm sorry to say, I have seen it, and you know, that didn't have the sharpness that The Heat did, and the interplay between Bullock and McCarthy, I think, you know, really accelerated The Heat to being, you know, a lot stronger of a comedy. I enjoyed that a lot more. And maybe you're right. But I do think that made McCarthy better. I mean, I don't want to say Melissa McCarthy did anything wrong in this movie, but I mean, you know, like, and I don't necessarily have any problem with the way it was scripted or anything like that. Except for the fact that it just didn't feel as funny to me. Like, it really boils down to that. And it's not to say that it wasn't funny. It's just not as funny. And you know, there's a couple other comedies that have, you know, similarly themed comedies. And we lost it for a second. The similarly themed comedies that came out in the last couple years that I thought were a lot stronger. The Heat, I think, was 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. And Neighbors from last year, I thought was a decently strong comedy. And this didn't live up to those necessarily.
I guess I would tend to put these all kind of in the same kind of area, and that's possibly why I don't necessarily see as many of them, because I think that it's a really hard thing to define a comedy that gets a wide release. I think that in general, we don't, like, or myself personally, I don't tend to go to theaters to see that kind of movie. I might see them like on TV at some point, or I might rent them at some point, but I don't necessarily feel like I need to have the experience of being in a theater. But having said that, I'm really glad that I saw this in a theater, because it definitely made me laugh more. I think that definitely being the experience with everybody else certainly helped turn up the cues to laugh in a certain way. And I don't know. I mean, there were times when I definitely laughed out loud just because I laughed out loud, and then there were times where I enjoyed the part of the thing that was funny because everybody was enjoying it. So it's kind of like I don't know how much credit you can give the experience over the actual personal involvement of this movie, but it was funnier than I expected either way. Like I didn't necessarily expect to laugh out loud at any part, and I still did. So I give it a lot of credit for doing that.
And it's interesting. I mean, certainly it's a lot more fun. I mean, the other comedy that we talked about this year was Hot Pursuit. Have we talked about any other comedies? I don't think we have.
Focus a comedy?
Count Home.
Focus was definitely a farce. I don't know if it was a comedy.
Yeah, no, for sure. But I mean, definitely like outranks Home. Outranks Hot Pursuit by 1,000%.
Oh yeah, totally. Well, Hot Pursuit had a lot of dead, thudding jokes. It didn't really go anywhere. This definitely had jokes. This definitely had setup and it had payoff, and it also had characters that were really, actually enjoyable to watch. Whereas Hot Pursuit was filled with sort of like these dead stereotypes that were not fun to watch.
Yeah, what I think it could have used a little more of is a style of comedy that I tend to enjoy more, and that is parody. And I wondered, like, after some of the marketing materials, I don't know if you saw the marketing materials in which, I don't know if they had this in New York and Detroit, where she was all done up in gold, a la Goldfinger.
Yeah,
did you see those posters?
Yeah.
I thought that might suggest that it was going to be like, include a little more send-up of James Bond and such. And there were certainly references to the James Bond genre, but not as specific references as that. Almost to the point that campaign might have been slightly misleading.
Well,
but it could use some of that parody.
Yeah, I guess what I would say is that it parodies modern spy stuff. I mean, I think with Goldfinger, that might have been a little off just because that suggests a certain time period, a certain era of spy.
I agree with that.
Whereas I think what they were doing, in this movie was actually parodying a lot of recent spate of stuff. Definitely a lot of Bourne, definitely a lot of the new Bond stuff. It had a lot of qualities to it that I think were at least aesthetically matched to those ideas. Like it looked a lot like those kind of movies.
No, but I mean, like, I'm saying it could have gone full throttle and done something like Airplane-ish or Naked Gun-ish. And I don't
think I would have enjoyed it much. I think that the reason I liked it as much as I did was because there was also parts to this movie that involved actual humanity. The characters were farcical, but they were not just cartoons. They were people that actually had emotional qualities to them that I really appreciated.
I would say that's true of Melissa McCarthy and of her sidekick, whose name we talked about earlier.
Miranda Hart.
Yeah. I mean, like, those two had a little more dimensions. The others not so much, which is a good segue.
I think that, for instance, Rose Byrne's character, Raina Boyanov, or something like that, I think, she does grow throughout the movie, and you actually see her transition as this kind of immediate villain into something that has a little bit more emotional quality. Jude Law, as his character sort of changes, as he becomes more aware of some things. Jason Statham is playing for the laughs entirely. You don't really see a change in his character, but he's also doing it so deliciously wonderfully that I don't have any problem with that personally.
Well, okay, well, that's where I disagree, and that's sort of where I was headed, is because there's this publication I read, and by the way, I've heard, I don't know if you've gotten the text also from Davey Joe that he's working on. He's working on coming back. Yeah. But anyway, but I'm sure our viewers are entertained just by us because we do have several at this point.
Hey.
So, hey, viewers. So the publication deadline, which is sort of like taken over from Hollywood Reporter and Variety, sort of being the trade magazine, the trade publication, even though it's online, for everyone in the industry reads. They have an awards columnist who is strangely good with his predictions. And he actually predicted, before I'd seen the movie, and I don't like to read reviews in advance, but it was in another column, and but he predicted an Oscar nomination for Jason Statham, and perfect time for Davey Joe to come back.
Yes.
I thought Jason's, and this guy he predicted in May the artist would win Best Picture, and I thought that was crazy at the time.
Yeah.
In May 20, I guess it was 2011, and I thought it was insane. I'm like, what? But he was dead on right. So I've come to respect him. But I thought Jason Statham was terrible and a real drawback for the movie for me. I thought the part was showy and he missed it. I thought he was way too over the top, and in a way that was not delicious, not in a way that was as controlled delicious as, say, Johnny Depp in Pirates of the Caribbean. This was a real drawback to the movie for me, Jason Statham's performance.
Well, that's fine. I guess I would fall between you and this reviewer. No way in hell would I say that he deserves any kind of Oscar nomination for this movie. He's playing a one-note joke throughout the entire thing. And the joke is basically like, hey, look, it's Jason Statham being funny at his own expense because he's playing against the archetype that he's always cast as. To that degree, I guess he's not an improv comedian, and you can tell in this movie that he's not. But I also think
he's completely out of place in this world.
I don't think it was completely out of place in this world. I think that I think that they cut it enough that they could make him fit in. Like I'm guessing there were probably times when he was trying to say things that were funny that they probably got left on the editing floor because it just didn't mesh with everything else that was going on.
I mean, I'm very specific about acting, and and I could tell when we call it pushing, and I could just tell he was pushing. Like stock moves, like flaring nostrils and wide eyes and stuff like that. That comes from the outside in instead of from the inside out, and actors will know what I'm talking about. There's a way to get underneath this character as broad as he was. And the other actors who handled this material very deftly, McCarthy, Law, Byrne, and was it Miranda Hart you said her name was?
Miranda Hart.
Yeah, I mean, they're all really strong and in their element. He seemed out of his element. And perfect timing for Davy Joe to make a comeback. Davy Joe, welcome back.
How you doing?
Davy Joe, we really don't know what you think about this movie yet. You should, or at least expound on what you said before.
Well, let's finish with Jason Statham, and then we'll go back.
All right. Well, here's the thing. I had some technical difficulties, and I think I still am because I could have sworn that I heard you say that you didn't think Statham was good in this movie. He was the best thing about this movie. He was hilarious, and I think Jay Money hit it on the head because he was making fun of himself. I
understand the point of his presence in the movie, but he missed it. I think it was a juicy fastball that he foul tipped. It was a great role that he missed because he's not as accomplished of a comedic actor. Or quite frankly, he's not accomplished as an actor, period, and he missed it. He missed this. It was a juicy opportunity, and he foul-tipped it. I feel like he missed it. It was a great role, and I feel like you have to distinguish between the role and the performance.
I don't think you can. I think in this situation, the role is the performance. I think the fact that he was cast this way is as much the point of it as anything else. And I don't have any problem.
I mean, it's also written.
I also don't have any problem with the way he did it, honestly. And I go back to what I was saying before. I think that he probably was edited down to fit into it nicely. I don't think that Statham really has the chops to pull it off just in general. And I feel like that he was definitely surrounded by these other really serious heavyweights in the comedic field. But I think that they managed to slip him in there in a way that was satisfying. I mean, it's also the reason why I think that his character has really no place to go. He is a one note throughout the entire film. It's just that he's a funny one.
It was written as a very showy character, and I didn't laugh once at him. I didn't laugh once. He was just so broad, and
No.
I'm sorry, I missed that. I might have. Jay Money, I missed you. What you were saying.
That's okay. Let's hear what David Joe has to say more. I want to hear more about that.
No, I don't know. I feel like he was doing the character of himself. He had to be Statham, being Statham. So I don't know. I feel like I can see how that could be annoying, but I loved it. I ate it up.
I have no problem with the intent. I have no problem with the director's intention or the writer's intention with the role. This is really about Statham's execution.
But
JB, now I'm just curious. Do you like Statham in other roles?
I like him in The Expendables, like when he's. Okay. I don't call it acting necessarily. Or a three-dimensional character, but I think he was fun and acceptable in that macho role. And also, was it The Italian Job? Was that the
Italian? The Transporter series is another one, and
I haven't seen the Transporter series or anything that he's basically a one-man show in. I haven't seen any of that stuff.
Okay.
But I was excited for him in this role, and I just feel like I'm able to tell when he's not, and Melissa McCarthy in a scene, she's performing circles around him. She's a trained professional, and I'm not sure he is.
I don't really think that, that played against the whole situation they had to set up between the two of them to begin with, though. I think that she's supposed to be playing circles around him, and that's why it's still effective. Like I don't
Yeah,
think. I guess what I'm saying is that I don't feel like that detracted anything from the relationship they had on screen, and it didn't really detract from the movie on a whole.
I mean, it did for me when I feel like when I feel like I'm watching an actor out of place. Like when he's doing his thing in The Expendables, he's in his element. Here he's not, and it just like it hurt me because it seemed struggle. Like it just felt like he was again pushing is the actor word to use.
I mean, it's funny.
Well, we haven't heard from David Joe yet.
Yeah.
So David Joe, I mean, like, was there other stuff about this movie you wanted to talk about? Because we're running out of time.
You know, I thought real quickly, without giving too much away, I thought McCarthy, she kind of like changes roles, or her cover changes, and she changes her story, and that's when she just kind of kicks it into high gear. And I thought she was just great. That's when I started to laugh. Most of the laughs came in the second half of the movie for me, and I really thought she was really something else. On the airplane is when the kind of the switch happens, and yeah, it was a fun movie, and I really did enjoy it.
Cool. Wow. Sounds like I'm the one detractor again. Are there other stuff that you guys wanted to talk about as far as?
Well, I think that we should probably talk about some of the other characters in this, just because it is a female-driven movie, and we spent a lot of time talking about Statham. Unfortunately, we should probably discuss.
Okay. To some degree. I mean, that was one of the main things we disagreed on, so I guess that's
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just saying, let's circle back and talk about some of the other performances in there, because I think they're definitely worth mentioning.
Sure.
I think.
Go ahead.
I thought Rose Byrne was fantastic in this movie, and again, I think that there was a lot of really interesting casting choices here, and I think that she pulled that off very well in a really convincing way, because she is sort of the evil woman among the comedian set here, and she's like the pretty one, quote unquote, and that she can kind of pull off that self-awareness in this film in a way that seems really, satisfying to me personally, and she embraced the idea of it really strongly, I think.
Cool, David Joe, you liked her as well, I presume.
Yeah, I did, she definitely. The funny thing is that she's kind of an interesting character in that she's not. I don't know. By the end of the movie, how bad is she still? It's kind of strange. It was different and kind of refreshing.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting written. I mean, yeah, it's an interesting written part. I feel like I like them both as actors in general. I thought McCarthy was better in Heat. I'm not that. Again, I don't think she's bad here. I just thought character was more interesting in Heat. In the Heat, I should say, and a little more rough around the edges and a little more to play with, I think. And Rose Byrne, I think, was a lot more interesting to me in Neighbors. And I mean, I feel like I'm the naysayer in this movie. I mean, if I had to rank it on a scale 1 to 10, I'd probably give it a 6 or a 7, which isn't that bad. But I mean, like, I guess compared to you guys, it feels like I'm just bringing up the negatives. I didn't dislike this movie. I just didn't laugh that much. And yeah, I mean, I like McCarthy and Byrne. I just thought they've been maybe too high expectations for this film.
That's fair.
Sure.
Anything else? We have maybe a couple minutes left on this before we do our top 5.
Let's see. I mean, I think that it was interesting to see McCarthy really kind of grow into a lead role from this point. I mean, this really is her first lead role, I believe, right? I mean, she's always been teamed up.
Tammy.
Was Tammy really a lead, or was she a co-star?
Yeah, no, it's definitely the lead.
Entire movie, yeah.
Okay. I rescind my comment.
But to call it a movie may be a stretch.
Success. I mean, Tammy was a big dud. This was her biggest success as the lead. And in Identity Thief, she was more or less a co-lead. Heat was a co-lead.
Ultimately, what I'm asking is, do you think this cements her basically as the new go-to hot comedic female character, woman in Hollywood?
Yes.
I mean, I feel like that's been cemented. Personally, I feel like that she's been in that A-list.
Well, but it's been leading to it, but then there's been a couple of lesser movies recently. There was Tammy, as you guys pointed out. There was Identity Thief, which really didn't do well. Does this kind of finally put her over the edge, and now we can all just relax about it and say, like, fine?
I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say from the middle of it. I mean, I just feel like we see her. That's our time. I just feel like we see her all the time. I mean, in the trades all the time. You know, booking new roles. Her husband is directing her in a new project coming up soon. It's her, and maybe the issue is I'm seeing, these deals are being done, a year or plus in advance of the movies coming out. So, perhaps that is a factor. But I mean, she's in the new Ghostbusters, again with Paul Feig. So I mean, I think she's it. I mean, not it is all there is. I mean, I think Amy Schumer might have something to say about that coming up in a few weeks. But I think that she is really among the top comedians that we have right now, and definitely A-list.
Cool.
So, all right. So what do you say we guys move on?
Okay.
And any closing thoughts before I move on?
David Joe?
No, it's nothing specific.
Okay. Love it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the final installment of my favorite segment of the show. Unfortunately, this segment's going to go bye-bye in the future, but our final top 5, and we're doing female-driven comedies in honor of Spy. And we got, guys, to let you guys know, we've got more viewers than we've had ever at once. So this is very exciting. So don't screw it up.
How many we got?
Welcome our 2 viewers.
I'd rather not say, but it's more. It's more.
4.
Game Money. Game Money, why don't you start with your number 5?
My number 5 goes all the way back to 1998. It's The Opposite of Sex, starring Christina Ricci, which I saw at the time in 1998, so I'm a little rusty on it. But I do recall that Christina Ricci was kind of pitch perfect in it. It was great as sort of the sarcastic foil to a lot of things that were happening in the movie. She really did lead the movie around, even though it was about a lot of different things that were happening. About her dealing with her gay brother, about her dealing with her mother and her terrible stepfather's relationship. There were a lot of things that were kind of funny. I think it was a great precursor to things that happened later on, for instance, in Juno, which set up, Ellen as sort of a great sarcastic female comedian. You guys hear me?
Yep.
You dropped out for me for a second there, but
Okay.
I barely remember Opposite Sex. I do not remember enjoying it. I just thought it was, I thought Spy was stronger. And I did not like Opposite of Sex. It was one of those movies that I just felt like mediocre about. It had some interesting moments, but also some moments that maybe were quirky for quirk's sake, as I recall. And I'm really talking out of my ass a little bit here because I very vaguely remember it. I remember Martin Donovan was supposed to be a big part of that, though, wasn't he?
Okay.
I remember. David Joe, do you remember Opposite of Sex?
I have never even heard of it, so no.
It was Don Russo. He did win a screenplay award for it.
Okay.
I think also Lisa Kudrow had a major role in it, as I recall.
Yeah.
You are pulling from your memory. Okay, so Davy Joe, what's your number 5?
5, Mean Girls.
Mean Girls.
What I remember about this movie is I remember.
I didn't hear it. Can you repeat it? I didn't hear it.
Mean Girls.
Mean Girls. Good call. Forgot about that.
And it basically what I remember finding funny about it is how kind of spot on it was with the kind of cliquish nature of high school, and how really how mean the girls are in high school. And how
narrative here.
Really they're toughest on each other. At least
Give
that's
away
how
with
I remember
words.
it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my number 5, Mean Girls.
Tina Fey is a great screenplay, and I think it really heralded Tina Fey as more than just the Saturday Night Live person. It really suggested a bright future for her. But then again, it also suggested a bright future for Lindsay Lohan. Look how that turned out. But yeah, I like Mean Girls a lot. Jay Money?
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely going to be talked about later. So.
Okay, all right, never mind. Sorry, didn't mean to do spoilers. Guys, you're not going to believe this. We did this in a top 5 earlier. I'm not going to talk as much about it, but look what's back. Gold Diggers of 1933, which is obviously I brought it up in the dance movies, which it is also, but the main plot of the movie is about these 3 women trying to land some dudes, and they're literally, as the movie suggests, they're trying to land rich husbands. And those are the 3 main women: Joan Blondell in the center, Ruby Keeler in the far right, and Elaine McMahon on the far left, who's sort of like the comic foil. So even though like in between the dance scenes, there's these very funny scenes of these 3 women, and not to mention Ginger Rogers is Anytime Annie. Really strong film. It's probably the best overall film of the 5 films. And I could have said that in the dance movie countdown as well, but because it wasn't all dance movie, it went a little lower on that list. And it's not all comedy, it goes a little lower on this list. But it's certainly a female-driven comedy. And maybe one of your guys' microphones is turned up too loud, which is why I'm getting feedback or echo. I don't know. Anyway.
I mean, I've turned mine down quite a bit. Are you sure yours is turned down, JB?
Well, I wouldn't hear myself if that were the case. I'm fine. I don't hear. Somebody did something because it's better now. Sorry. J Money, you're number 4.
My number 4 is going back to the 90s again, and it probably is a movie that you guys might struggle to remember. It's Welcome to the Dollhouse from 1995, starring Heather Matarazzo, who has popped up here and there since then. I think for me, first off, it's a very dark comedy, so it barely kind of squeaks into this category. I don't know if you guys have seen it all. JB, have you seen it?
Yeah, I mean, but in 1996, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, no, it came out in 95. At least that's what IMDb says. I mean, I saw it when it came out, and that sounds about right. It was a movie that I actually found really fascinating, especially at the time, because I wasn't that far in age from the main character, and I also felt like there was a lot of struggles that I could identify with, even though I wasn't going through nearly the same sort of gender dynamics as she was. But it was a really incredibly raw, intense movie that I think was a very dark comedy. It's definitely skewed.
I mean, Todd Solondz is a dark guy.
Yeah, no, it's the kind of thing where I think we were talking about this earlier, JB, about what makes it really a comedy. This is a movie that I'm stretching to call a comedy. I mean, it is funny in a sense because you're kind of laughing in pain, but it's not like it's a comedic movie. But regardless, I think it's a really powerful movie, and I think that it still holds up over the amount of time that's been between now and then. So.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time arguing with its presence on the list. I mean, I guess it's interesting that both of your, I mean, from what I recall about The Opposite of Sex, it's interesting that both of your choices so far featured young women, or like I don't want to say underage, but certainly, I mean, Christina Ricci was a teenager in that movie, wasn't
she? Was older. She was a little bit older. I mean, she was like towards the end of teenagedom. Welcome to the Dollhouse. The character herself was, I think, around 10 or 11 or 12, maybe. I mean, I think it's interesting. I think those are very 2 different characters. I think that they're also movies about 2 different girls.
Sure. It's just a connection that I noticed because, I mean, in fairness,
like the opposite of Sex isn't really about Christina Ricci's character struggling through it, becoming aware of herself, whereas Welcome to the Dollhouse definitely is. So it's really 2 different types of movies.
No, for sure. I mean, I guess in making my own list, I didn't really think about some of the younger, female stuff. So, but I thought it was interesting that both of your, actually, and I guess David Jones did as well. I
think it's actually a point I want to talk about a little bit later as we get further into the list. So we'll round that.
David Joe. On my screen, it looks like you're muted, but what do you? What's your number 4?
Oh, for number 4, Legally Blonde.
Ah.
I have to be honest. I've not seen the movie. I've only seen the musical. I think it's a fantastic musical. The music written by Larry O'Keefe and his wife Nell Benjamin. So I can't say too much about the movie though. But the musical's a great Broadway show.
Yeah, I think it's obviously it's Reese Witherspoon and she's really funny in the movie, and it kind of reminds me of the movie we already did, Hot Pursuit, and why I was kind of looking forward to Hot Pursuit and why Hot Pursuit was such a disappointment. But no, she's really funny, and maybe part of it's because I went to law school, way back when, and it's
Did you
just,
meet Elle in law school?
what's that?
Did you meet an Elle type in law school?
Oh, they're there, man. Everyone's a little over prepared, a little wound up. Yeah. I mean, they're.
J Money, what do you think of Legally Blonde?
I also really enjoy it, and now I feel bad that I didn't include it on my list. I think it's actually a really funny movie, and I think I absolutely agree with David Joe about how I felt about going into Hot Pursuit, because I think that Reese Witherspoon has a lot of comedic chops, and it's based on that. It's based on some other things she's been in, like Election, that and it was kind of upsetting to see her in Hot Pursuit and not really follow through with that. But Legally Blonde, I definitely enjoyed.
Well, cool. If you had thought of it, would you insert it onto your list over some of the things that you've had? Would that knock out?
It probably would knock out either 4 or 5. I mean, I think that I would probably put that in towards the end, but yeah.
Well, it's funny because my number 4 is almost a prototype for the female-driven comedy, at least in the modern era, and it's sort of Reese Witherspoon's predecessor from a certain point of view. My number 4 is Private Benjamin from 1980, and which is a movie that sort of is the iconic image from the movie, and it's a movie that put Goldie Hawn on the map, and for most of the 80s, Goldie Hawn was the preeminent comedian, sort of the way Melissa McCarthy is now. So it's a really and for the have you guys seen this film? I know it's older, but I tend to do the older ones.
No, I personally haven't seen it.
Yeah, I've seen it. I really don't remember it. I was pretty young.
Yeah, no, it's a here's still of her before she, just as she's about to join. It's a pretty sharp movie, and the left side of this frame, this photo here, is Eileen Benjamin, who's actually nominated. Actually, she and Goldie Hawn were both nominated for Oscars for their performances, and there was also a short-lived TV show based on this as well that was, had a really successful first season and then faded off in its second season. But that Eileen Brennan actually reprised her role. It's a really it's a terrific comedy, and one of the best of the 80s. Certainly from a female point of view. So, and you've never seen it, J Money, you said, right?
Yeah, I missed the 80s entirely, but I'm familiar with the fact that it exists, so there's that.
I mean, if Goldie Hawn's an Oscar winner. I don't know if you knew that. She did win an Oscar in 1969 for a supporting role, but if there was any, because she's sort of, I don't want to say she's a complete joke now, but she hasn't done a lot in a while.
That's kind of hard. You consider her a complete joke?
I don't personally, because I've seen films like Private Benjamin, but I mean, I just think her career has stalled in a certain kind of way, and maybe that's by choice, maybe it's not. But I mean, even in the latter part of her career, when she was still doing movies, she was doing a lot of duds, like the Banger Sisters. So I think that if there was ever, I don't know how much you guys are familiar with Goldie Hawn's work, but if there was ever any doubt about the quality of work that she could do, you definitely check out Private Benjamin. So let's switch to Davy Joe for his number 3.
Number 3 is Feds.
Feds.
I don't know if you guys have seen Feds. They're 2 female leads, and it's kind of like the stereotypical jockey, athletic girl, and then the sort of nerdy girl, and they're in.
Who's in this movie?
What's up?
Who's in this movie?
You want me to tell you who the actresses are, and I'm blanking on that. But have you? So you haven't seen Feds, then? I take it.
I'm not sure I've heard of it, and I'm digging to the deep recesses of my brain. It sounds vaguely familiar, but I'm not sure. I mean, no, I don't. I definitely haven't seen it, and I'm not sure I've heard of it.
It's funny thing about this movie, and it is the first movie I ever saw on a VCR.
Ah.
So it's old.
Yeah, it's from the 80s.
Yeah, it's an 80s movie, and I saw it at camp. Anyway, it's funny. It's a funny movie, and it's kind of in the same vein as Spy, in the sense that it's got an action element to it, and I think that sort of in what we're talking about here, it's kind of a movie that was a bit ahead of its time, and that's why I moved it up the list.
Ahead of its time, how? By the way, it's Rebecca De Mornay and Mary Gross are the two actresses.
All right, there you go. Thank you for that. Just ahead of its time, the fact that it was kind of an action movie, kind of like Spy, and the fact that it had female leads and solidly female leads. They were easily 1 and 2, or 1 and 1A in this movie. And
so the movie seems like it wasn't much of a success.
I don't know. I don't know how it did in the box office, but it definitely was on cable a lot.
I would like to shout out to our audience real quick. If any of you have seen Feds and want to back up Davy Joe on this, please write us in either on the Facebook page or we have a comment section as part of this video. So I'd like to hear what the you audience members have to say about that. Because now that I re-looked it up, I've definitely not heard of this movie. Because when I first looked it up, I put initials F.E.D. and I couldn't find it. So anyway, I assume you haven't seen it, J Money.
No, I've actually seen it numerous times. I grew up watching it as well. I'm actually very familiar with it. I enjoyed it quite a bit when I was a kid. I haven't seen it since that time period, so it didn't end up on my list because of that. But
I can't believe there's a movie that both of you have seen that I have not. This is crazy.
I don't know how you avoided it, JB. I mean, seriously, I think that TBS ran at one point. Like every day.
I have not had cable at any house in my life until this year.
Yeah, I forgot that you grew up in the
Amish country. Number 3, J Money.
Well, circling back to Goldie Hawn for a second, number 3 is Death Becomes Her from 1992. Which is a movie that I have seen repeatedly since it came out. I saw it in the theater. I've seen it, probably every couple of years since then, and it's a movie that I still really enjoy quite a bit. It's a movie that when I first saw it, I was taken aback in some ways by how dark it seemed because I was also younger and I didn't quite get it. But over the years, I've actually really enjoyed watching how my impression of it also changes to see how the vanity of these characters has kind of been more personal to me in some ways as I've gotten older to understand it. But even beyond that, I just think that Meryl Streep and Goldie Hawn are just really funny in this movie. I think that they both play off each other so well in a way that you haven't seen in other things. So,
a little love for Robert Zemeckis. I'm a little surprised that you would have a Zemeckis film on your list. He seems the anti-J Money kind of director.
Well, I'm a little surprised that Robert Zemeckis was behind it. I guess I would say it doesn't feel like a very Zemeckis-y film to me.
I mean, there does feel like elements of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, like in terms of some of the stylistic elements of it in it.
Oh, sure.
It's funny. It came up because it was Meryl Streep's birthday the other day, and so she lit up Facebook, and at least everybody in my world, the artsy world, they were blowing up about. There was this whole conversation about her greatest performance. And first of all, if anybody does not say Sophie's Choice is Meryl Streep's greatest performance, then they haven't seen Sophie's Choice because it's actually the greatest performance in the history of cinema. But I'm dead serious. But most people were actually listing Death Becomes Her as Meryl Streep's greatest performance.
Oh, really?
Which I think Death Becomes Her, but that's a silly statement.
I wouldn't do that. I guess I'd actually honestly agree with you about Sophie's Choice, JB. I mean, at least about her greatest performance. Definitely over Death Becomes Her. I think Death Becomes Her is funny. I don't think it's too much. I think that both characters are a little kind of, they're fun, but I don't feel like there's too much to read into them. I also think it's interesting, especially watching it now, because it was so promoted for having crazy special effects at the time. It was sort of at the advent of when computers were getting involved with everything, and it's just kind of charming in that sense. If you watch it now, it seems so easygoing about the way that it adopts these effects into it, and it's shocking. It was shocking at the time, I guess, in some ways to see it, but now it just seems very commonplace.
So I mean, I think it's interesting that the through line that I see of your 3 choices so far is a certain level of darkness.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyway, so how you feeling, Davy Joe? You all right over there? Just give me a thumbs up. I know you're on mute. All right, moving right along. This is a movie that I think launched a career, and it probably is. It's from the 90s, but it should have been in the 30s or 40s. While You Were Sleeping, and this movie is almost completely a performance-driven film. I mean, Sandra Bullock takes this film and puts it on her shoulders and makes it a watchable, beyond entertaining film. Her charisma is something to behold in this movie, after this movie, you sort of know that a star is born. The premise is silly, but it doesn't matter because her charm, her self-deprecating charm in this movie. I think is just takes it to a different level. It's sweet, it's charming, and it's all on her. And she's even grown as a comedian over the years. But this was her first movie after Speed, and I think it remains a special place in the history of her career. Have you guys seen it? Anything?
Yeah, I actually also really actually enjoyed the movie as well, JB. I guess I wouldn't say that I think it's a great movie necessarily, but I agree with everything you're saying about her performance. And I think that the movie is worth watching for her performance. I don't know if it's worth going to a theater for it, but I think it's worth definitely renting. And it's definitely the kind of movie that you want to curl up with on a couch and watch every, once a year maybe. That kind of movie.
Yeah, I'm not even sure I would watch it once a year, but am I having problems? Oh, there she is. I'm not sure I would even watch it once a year. I just think, I maybe watch it once every 5 years or something. Even
Sure.
that. It's just a sweet, charming movie. I think it's really, and yeah, I think we're in complete agreement. Davey Joe, do you have anything?
I haven't seen it, so no.
All right, move on to your number 2 then.
Jesus is Magic. Sarah Silverman.
Is that a movie or is that a stand-up thing?
It's a film. It's a feature. You could argue, but I was scraping here, so it's to me.
But it's all the way at number 2.
Yeah, well, if you're talking about a female-driven comedy, it's hilarious. Now it's gonna offend a lot of people, but it's kind of like everyone compares her to Amy Schumer or compares Amy Schumer to her, but it's pretty good comparison, and I think that this is kind of like the start of that of that movement, and I think of female comedians really getting their just due and really just a chance. So that's why I think it's kind of a very important film in that regard.
I haven't seen it. J Money?
Yeah, no, I've seen it. I enjoy it. I guess I would. Well, first off, it's a concert movie, so I don't know how much it really falls into this. But beyond that, that's fine. I like Sarah Silverman. I think I like her more in theory than I do when I see her in stand-up. I think that she's hilarious on Twitter, for instance, but I don't know if I really like watching her go through an entire act necessarily. But I enjoyed Jesus is Magic. I just didn't think it was, hilarious, but I understand why it's respectable, and I understand why a lot of people really gravitate towards it. So.
Well, I would say that the whole reason that we're doing this top 5 is because of Melissa McCarthy's emergence as a female actor comedian, being a centerpiece of these movies, like Jay Money was talking about earlier. And it doesn't seem like Jay Money said, it's too late now. It doesn't seem like a concert movie really applies. She's not playing a character. She's not, leading an ensemble or anything. But it is what it is. What it is. Jay Money, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is actually a very recent movie compared to what I've been talking about. It's Frances Ha from 2013, I believe, starring Greta Gerwig and Mickey Sumner. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
My passionate hatred for Greta Gerwig, right?
That doesn't. No, I don't. But
are you aware of my passionate hatred for Greta Gerwig?
Honestly, JB, you have a passionate hatred for a lot of things, so that doesn't really surprise me much, and also it doesn't really surprise me.
And yet you're the hater.
Okay, fine, you hater, whatever. It's a charming little movie. I love the fact that it's kind of playing against the sort of like man-boy kind of paradigm of comedy. Here we have this sort of female character lead who's trying to find herself.
Do you actually think Greta Gerwig is a talented actor?
Yes, I think that Greta Gerwig is a talented actor. Based on what I've seen, which is Frances Ha, which I'm saying I enjoyed, it went into my number 2 slot. Yes, I think that Greta Gerwig is a talented actor.
Well, yeah, no, I disagree about that. But Davey Joe, have you seen Frances Ha?
I have not. Sorry.
I enjoy the movie.
Right.
It's a slight movie. I really enjoyed the fact that it was a slight movie, and it's not the kind of movie that I necessarily laughed out loud a lot at. But I think that I really enjoyed the parts that were funny to me, the parts that were relevant to me. Definitely takes place in New York and Brooklyn. That's things that I can relate to in a lot of ways. So.
I could relate to that as well, but and I think I've talked about Noah Baumbach and his relationship to actors I've worked with. If I haven't, I'll tell you. I'll remind you guys off camera. But yeah. So I mean, I like Noah Baumbach as a person, and I like a lot of his work. The whole Greta Gerwig's aspect of his career, the sidetrack. I mean, I love Squid and the Whale, for example. Mm-hmm. But and I like Greenberg in spite of her, but everything else since then has been a struggle for me. All right, moving on to my number 2. We're running out of time, unfortunately. So I'm going international with my number 2. And I hope you guys have seen this film from 2001, Amelie. And I think, Amelie. What's that?
Amelie counts for this?
Why wouldn't it? It's a female-driven comedy.
I wouldn't have defined it as a comedy.
Really? What would you define it as?
I don't know. It's too quirky to me to be a comedy. It's too humanist. Like,
wait a minute. Too quirky to be a comedy, and yet you've got Welcome to the Dollhouse and Frances Ha, and Amelie's too quirky?
Yeah, because I feel like Welcome to the Dollhouse and Frances Ha are definitively comedies. They're categorized as comedies. I don't think that Amelie is categorized as a comedy, is it?
Yeah, for sure. Right. I mean, first of all, I think Amelie is hilarious.
I think it's a great movie. I'm not going to debate you. If you think it's great, if you think it fits in there, then it does.
Well, I mean, I thought a lot about it, but I mean, like, I think Amelie, for example, is I think it's very funny.
I do too. And honestly, I completely agree with you. So, go on.
David Joe, do you think Amelie shouldn't count?
I think it falls into an interesting category of movies. A lot of the movies that we've talked about tonight fall into this category. It's movies I haven't seen. So, yeah.
You haven't seen Amelie.
I would like to see it. It's been on my list for quite some time.
The one thing I'll say about Amelie is it is the most a lot of these other films that we've talked about, certainly While You Were Sleeping was extreme, and Private Benjamin, I would say, are extremely driven by the performances of the individual actresses in question. And I mean, Amelie has a great performance at its center as well. But the difference with Amelie is it's also an extremely stylistic, filmmaker-driven movie as well. And the combination of that and Audrey Tautou, is what makes a great film. So it was necessarily, like, maybe that's why you think it doesn't qualify, is because it's not a laugh-out-loud comedy necessarily. I mean, except she does some of her tricks that she plays on people, like, they're hilarious. So, yeah, I mean, I think, and there's some romance involved, some bittersweetness, but I mean,
I would say it covers a lot of ground, and it also has to deal with some bigger things that are definitely not comedically driven, so I guess I don't consider it outright a comedy. But I mean, this gets back to what we were saying before about how we define comedies versus movies that we think are funny and amusing or quirky.
I'm surprised that
if you want to call it a comedy, I'm not going to have too much. Sorry?
I'm saying I'm surprised, especially given some of your some of the films you had. I'm surprised that you don't consider this a comedy, given
I guess what I would say.
I mean, like, it's as much a comedy as Welcome. I mean,
I guess what I would say is, compared to the other movies, I might give you Welcome to the Dollhouse, for instance. I don't know about Frances Ha, but I either way, I'm not really complaining. I mean, I think it's a great movie, and I'm happy to see that you included it here.
Okay. All right. So, Jay Money, since we're on you, why don't you give us your number 1? We have
my number 1 is a tie for first place among 3 movies, and I'm doing this because we talked about this a little bit earlier as well. It's a tie between Heathers, Clueless, and Mean Girls, which are all movies that I really enjoy, but they're all movies that fit into a very specific category. And I also think it's interesting that they fit into this category because we were talking about earlier how much there's a certain style of movie that involves young women finding themselves at a certain point in their lives that seems like it's a very popular trope to come back to. These are movies that are also involving that.
Yeah, I like Heathers the most of those 3. That's. I mean, yeah. I mean, we're running out of time, so I don't want to talk too much about it. But Davy Joe, you obviously like Mean Girls.
Yeah, that's the one I saw of those 3, so I liked it the best.
Not even Clueless or Heathers?
No.
Heathers, incidentally, is another one that is turned into a musical by the very same guy that wrote the music for Legally Blonde. and also a really strong musical. Not as strong as Legally Blonde the musical, but yeah, Heathers is really good. Now, why did you like? It's interesting that you chose to do a three-way tie. I'm not sure I understand why that happened.
Well, because I think that honestly, it's because I really like all three of the movies quite a lot, but I didn't want my entire list to end up being movies about girls in high school. I mean, I really do think that there's a reason that I'm pulling them together, and that's because it seems like there's a lot of similarity in terms of the basic tropes that we're talking about here. There's a lot of similarity in terms of overlap between scenarios, between kind of the ideas that they're getting through too. Even though the styles are very different, even though stylistically they're very different, I guess I feel like there's a lot of territory that's tread over and over again in some ways. And I didn't think it was fair to not, to have them take up all the entire list, but at the same time, I really like these three movies quite a bit, so I wanted them to be acknowledged.
If you had to choose one of the three?
If I had to choose one of the three, I would probably go with Heathers. Mean Girls would probably be second, and Clueless would probably be third.
Or at least we give you Joe. You're number one.
Number one is Bridesmaids. This is the movie I picked as number one just because it made me laugh hard. I remember losing my composure a few times in the theater.
Does that mean you shit your pants?
No. It didn't get that critical, but it was a really funny movie, and I know that it's kind of cliche and it's probably what most people would pick, but I can't deny the truth.
Well, easy with the word truth. It's an opinion, clearly, and I'm not a fan of the film. I did not laugh at the film. I mean, its broad strokes were too much for me, but so it's not the truth. It may be your truth.
Well, that's that's what I'm saying. Is that I can't deny that it's my favorite.
Okay, no, and no one would ask you to. I assume you haven't seen Bridesmaids, you said, right, J Money?
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I keep meaning to, certainly.
So it wouldn't. So I'm going to move on. There's not much more I can say about Bridesmaids. We're running out of time. Hope you don't mind, Davey Joe. But it's not going to surprise anybody that I'm going to go old school for my number one. This is my favorite actress of all time, Ginger Rogers, and a performance I believe I've already talked with you guys about. It's called The Major and the Minor. Have you guys seen this film?
No.
I know you haven't seen it. Have I talked about it?
Maybe.
Last week I think I brought it up during the Fortune Cookie because it's Billy Wilder's first film as a director.
Yeah, okay.
And it's the year after Ginger Rogers won an Oscar for her work in Kitty Foyle, and this is another movie that is a virtuoso performance. The plot of it is, I should probably actually just bring that photo back up. The plot of it is that she's a 26-year-old woman living in New York that needs to get home but can't afford the train fare. So she poses as a 13-year-old girl, as you can see here, to afford the train fare, and then she winds up, through various hijinks, she winds up on a boys' military school, and as a result, hijinks ensue. And here you can see, her dealing with some of the boys at the military school. It's a virtuoso performance for Rogers, who and probably one of the best actors I've seen, because she manages to play not only a modern for 1941, modern 20-something woman, but also convincingly play the 13-year-old. And at one point in the movie, she actually has to dress up as like a 83-year-old woman. And she's convincing as that as well. It's a very sharp comedy, as you can imagine. Billy Wilder, everything about the movie works: the script, the writing, and a virtuoso performance. So it's one of those movies that I feel like you all need to see, not just you guys, but our viewers. It doesn't get a lot of pub, but I think if anybody has any questions about Ginger Rogers being more than just a dancer, Major and Minor is a good example.
Okay.
I assume you guys have not seen it.
Haven't seen it.
No, I would see it. I would like to.
So I just want to point out to our viewers that if you are tuning in to see or talk about Dom Hemingway, the Indie Spotlight, we're going to be about a few minutes late. We're going to end this right now and start up Dom Hemingway in about 2-3 minutes. So keep an eye on our Facebook page for the information. Indie Spotlight coming up next. See you then.